Welcome to the block. Week 1 of college football is finally here. We got 5 straight days of college football coming up, starting Thursday night with 16 games, just a buffet of action. Carl Reed, Blake Brockermeyer, you guys ready to pick some games? We got the 6 games that we really got our eyes on, and there are so many good ones out there, of course. I want to, of course, focus on Saturday. You guys have already gone through some Thursday games on a previous episode of the block here. We start off with Georgia against Oregon. Georgia, a huge favorite, a 17-point favorite in that game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So many storylines with this game. Dan Lanning, the former Georgia defensive coordinator, going up against his former team there at Georgia. Bo Nix, the former Auburn quarterback, now expected to be the starter for the Oregon Ducks, going against Georgia, a team that he's 0-3 against previously with the Tigers. Carl, how do you see this one shaking out?
Well, I think this is a great way to open up the college football season. 2 high-profile programs, obviously Georgia, the defending national champion. You add that with Oregon, who's been a power on the West Coast. A lot of people call them Nike University. Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart go way back. Lanning not only was the defensive coordinator at Georgia, he was also Kirby Smart's GA at the University of Alabama. So if anybody knows Kirby Smart and the way he runs this program, it's Dan Lanning. But I do think right now that Georgia is still too loaded for Oregon right now. I'm going to pick the Georgia Bulldogs in this game over Oregon, 38-28. I think they're going to give Bo Nix some issues in his first start. He hasn't mastered them yet. I think that continues, and this is a big way for Georgia to open up the season.
I like Georgia as well. I think Georgia is going to look a little bit different than they did last year. I think their offense has the ability to be really good this year, depending on what Kirby Smart lets them do offensively. I think their defense will be something to keep an eye on. They're still going to be good, but they're not going to be anything like they were last year. At least I don't think they will. Oregon's got a veteran offensive line that's got a lot of experience, along with Bo Nix, like we talked about. And, how will they attack Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Kelly Ringo, those guys offensively? And then Georgia, they've got a really good offensive line as well. The best tight end group in the country, a very complimentary group of receivers that are, in my opinion, a little bit underrated. So it's going to be a great game. I like Georgia as well. I think Georgia 40-24 is the way I see it happening. And, Georgia having a home game in Atlanta is a great way to start off the season for the Bulldogs to try to repeat as national champs.
Wow, 64 combined points there. That's incredible considering how good Georgia's defense was last season. They lose quite a bit, but I still really like that Georgia defense. As for me, Bo Nix, I think, is kind of the X factor here for Oregon. What kind of Bo Nix are we going to see out there? He struggled at Auburn behind a kind of a weak offensive line going against Georgia in his previous 3 starts there. The problem is he wasn't able to really create things when things kind of sunk down on him. And I don't quite like that, especially when he goes back on the road once again to face this Georgia team. He's only had 2 total touchdowns and 3 turnovers in those 3 previous starts against the Georgia Bulldogs. I think Georgia ends up winning this one pretty easily. And I think that Oregon's going to go back to the Pac-12 trying to figure out exactly where they're going to be standing in the conference this year. Because I think Oregon's going to take a little bit of a step back and things aren't going to be as rosy in Dan Lanning's first season there in Eugene. So I've got Georgia winning 35-24. I think that Georgia offense is going to be a little bit more explosive this season as well. All right, let's move forward here as we look at Notre Dame at Ohio State. Yet another huge game, 2 marquee programs, but another huge spread. Ohio State favored by 17 points. Quite the spread here. Why is that? What's going to happen? Blake, you're up.
Well, I think it's because Notre Dame's overrated. I mean, I don't think they're a top 5 team, in my opinion. And when you got to go on the road and go play at night in the Horseshoe, that's a horrible way to start off your coaching career for the 2022 season if you're Marcus Freeman. But They break in a new quarterback in Tyler Buckner. They are going to need to run the ball behind their very talented offensive line. I like the offensive line at Notre Dame. I think they've got some guys on there that are NFL caliber players. A lot of them are young, but they're going to need to control the clock, test out when they can Ohio State secondary. I think that's the weak spot of their defense that people are going to have to try to figure out. Jim Knowles is a mastermind defensive coordinator. There's no doubt in my mind that their defense is going to be much, much better this year. But Ohio State's offense is just freaking loaded with first-round picks. I mean, Stroud, Henderson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Paris Johnson. There's more. So it's going to be a tough test for Notre Dame. I like Notre Dame. I mean, I like Ohio State 30-14. But I think this game has the potential to possibly get out of hand even more.
When I look at this game, Blake, I agree with you on this. I think Notre Dame lost a lot. I think that we're underplaying the significance that Kyron Williams had at Notre Dame's offense a year ago. He was their bell cow, and although they had a great offensive line, he's now with the Los Angeles Rams, and he's no longer in South Bend. That was a significant loss. You also are breaking in a new quarterback. Notre Dame at number 5 is probably a little too high. Then when you flip it over to the other sideline, Ohio State legitimately has 3 guys that could be in contention to win the Heisman Trophy, as well as a host of other first-round talents at the skill positions and on both sides of the line. Ohio State is one of the picks this year to play in the national championship game. I just think overall they're going to be a little too much for Notre Dame. They addressed their defensive situation with the hiring of Coach Knowles on the defensive coordinator position. I do think that, like Blake said, you might try to test their secondary a little early, but I don't think that that's Notre Dame's strength either, to even try to put a lot of pressure on the secondary. I'm going to go with Ohio State in this one, 35-20, but it could get out of hand.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think this one could very well get out of hand pretty quickly. I mean, that Ohio State offense, if it even lives up to even half of the hype that we're seeing right now, they're just absolutely loaded. They're going to be able to spread the ball around the field, do whatever they want against practically anybody. And talk about a first big test as a full-time head coach for Marcus Freeman. His thing's defense, as we all know. And boy, your first game out of the gate is, hey, go against the best offense of all of college football. So, yeah, Notre Dame, they're in for probably a world of trouble at Ohio Stadium. Not sure, though, Ohio State covers. You might see Notre Dame with a backdoor cover there, but I got Ohio State winning 31-21. Okay, SEC country, my neck of the woods. In fact, just my backyard. University of Arkansas hosting Cincinnati, the first group of 5 program to reach the college football playoff last season. Cincy, though, loses quite a bit. They go into Arkansas as a 6.5-point underdog. The Bearcats losing 9 players to the NFL draft last season. Quite a bit to replace. But will this still be a tight one? Carl, what do you think?
When you look at Cincinnati, they were the darlings of last year, making the playoffs. Lost a lot of great players. Yeah, you just said 9 guys to the NFL. Everybody loves an underdog story. Everybody loves when the group of 5 teams make an impact on college football and potentially the playoffs. But I think Arkansas is going to be too much. Styles make fights. You know, people have to understand it's like boxing. We have weight classes for a reason. You're talking about a really solid SEC West program going against a group of 5 program that lost a ton off of a great team. I think Barry Odom is doing a significant job on the defensive side of the ball. Kendall Browse has the offense with KJ Jefferson cooking, and the head hog, Sam Pittman, has the team and the culture running in the right direction. I'm going to go with Arkansas here, winning 28-17.
I like Arkansas as well. I think they kind of take the Alabama blueprint that they did in the Cotton Bowl, where they're going to run the ball downhill on them. But the difference is they're going to be able to take some shots where Alabama just chose to run the ball against them last year with the 2 lockdown corners they had. Arkansas's got some weapons on the outside with Hazelwood, Ketron Jackson are big targets for KJ Jefferson. They've got a massive offensive line. Their linebacker group at Arkansas is elite, and Jalen Catalon's the best middle of the field safety in the country, in my opinion. So way too many weapons for Arkansas at home. I would have loved to have seen this game last year, but Cincinnati's just got way too many questions. Luke Fickell's one of the elite coaches in college football, in my opinion. I have a feeling they're going to be better than we think they are. Josh Weil is one of my favorite tight ends in the country, but I don't see how they're going to be able to stop them consistently. I got Arkansas 33-19.
You just can't count out Luke Fickell, the Cincinnati head coach. They're 22-0 in non-bowl games over these last two seasons. But, of course, those two losses to SEC teams, Georgia and, of course, Alabama last year in the playoff. Way too much to replace for Cincinnati. Arkansas is absolutely loaded with some superstars. You mentioned Jalen Catalon, injured last season, was an All-American as a freshman. I think he might be an All-American once again this year. Those linebackers, five-star transfer Drew Sanders from Alabama. They love to cover a lot of field, those linebacker spots. That's exactly what he's built for. This Arkansas defense, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people as far as just how salty they are, how many turnovers they force. And that defensive line, they play a lot of three-man front, but they feel a lot better about getting to the quarterback this year. I think Cincinnati's in big trouble here, but Luke Fickell, fantastic coach. I think he'll find a way to maybe keep this one tight in the first half, but I got Arkansas pulling away there in the fourth quarter, 28-21, too much star power for the Razorbacks. Now, speaking of star power, Utah absolutely loaded offensively, and they're going into the swamp. Gator bait, or are the Utes going in there to lay a stomping on these Gators of Florida? Utah, only a 3-point favorite, but it is the swamp. Florida, 79-9 at home against non-conference teams since 1990. What happens here? Blake, you're up.
Well, on paper, Utah is a much more talented team. They've got Tavion Thomas, who's a very good running back, running behind two really good tight ends of Brent Keith and Dalton Kincaid, behind four returning offensive linemen. And by the way, Cam Rising is back as well. So they're loaded on offense and on defense as well. They've got a really good front seven. They've got Clark Phillips in the back end, who has a chance to be a first-round pick, I think, at Utah. Florida is going to have to do a couple of things to stay in this game. One, their home crowd is going to have to be elite. They are going to have to be like they were at the Alabama game last year. Anthony Richardson is going to have to be consistently good. They're going to need 5+ explosive plays in this game, and they cannot have a turnover to keep this game close, in my opinion. I see Utah as a 38-17 winner in this game, and I think Utah has a chance to have a special season this year.
The Utah Utes are absolutely loaded. Kyle Whittingham, one of the premier college coaches in all of college football, and especially on the defensive side of the ball, has built his team and program around a rugged running game, hard-nosed defense, and he's got to be looking at this season like it is their year. Going down into Florida, Florida lost a lot. Billy Napier, first-year coach, I think that he's going to do an excellent job, and the Florida Gators will get back to the top of the SEC East, competing with Georgia eventually. But right now, outside of the quarterback position, not enough talent at the skill spots to make a dent on this Utah defense. They're really weak at wide receiver, not a lot of elite playmakers on the edge. They had a significant injury to a star transfer out of Arizona State earlier in practice. I think when you look at this, Utah dominates this game on the line of scrimmage. They run it downhill. They have their way with them defensively. And I'm going with Utah winning here 38-10.
Some huge numbers there. You guys are absolutely going after the Florida Gators. I'm kind of there with you. I mean, Florida just not very deep. In fact, I don't have much to add other than this. I don't know if you guys saw the team photo that Florida took. Billy Napier loves to build a large support staff. He's taking that Alabama blueprint. The support staff dwarfed, it looked like, the roster, the 105-man roster there at Florida. The Gators just not very deep, jokes aside. They're not going to be able to keep up with Utah, even with them playing in the swamp. I think Utah ends up pulling away and beats Florida 27-17 in a game that really isn't going to be that close. Utah just way too physical in the trenches. Utah, the most physical team west of the Mississippi River last year, and that will continue this season. That's why I've got them going to the playoff this year. All right, so we move to Sunday, which, guys, we were talking about this in our production meeting. This might actually be the game of the weekend as far as just entertainment value and also answering a lot of questions about two marquee programs. Florida State under Mike Norvell trying to get things going, of course, as we've seen. They've already played their opener in week 0. LSU, the Brian Kelly era begins. Has he brought the luck of the Irish with them to Baton Rouge? I think that might be sacrilegious for me to say that because they don't want anything with Notre Dame going on in LSU other than that Coach Kelly, who has a playoff pedigree. LSU, though, lost a lot in the transfer portal, as we know. We don't even know who their starting quarterback is going to be. Is it the Arizona State transfer, Jaden Daniels? Maybe so. Maybe they play both quarterbacks. Blake, we'll start with you. What are we expecting? This has all the makings of just some unexpected plays happening.
Yeah, I wonder if Lou Holt sent him a nice little letter to wish him luck for the week. But this is going to be the most interesting game of the weekend for me. LSU obviously has not played. They've got almost a third of their roster is new. They've got two quarterbacks that no one really knows exactly who they're going to play. I'm kind of with you, Brandon. I think they're going to play both. They've got a freshman starting at left tackle and Will Campbell going against a pretty good Florida State defensive line with Jared Verse. I think that's a matchup that I'm going to have my eyes on. And then vice versa, I think LSU has maybe the second best defensive line in the country. And going against Florida State's offensive line, that's the other matchup that I'm going to be looking at. So it's going to be a battle of the trenches. It's an LSU home game, obviously. Florida State got their feet wet last week and kind of got some of the kinks out. And so that could be an advantage for them. I like LSU 30-24. I think this is going to be a great game. And I'm looking forward to watching this one because this is going to answer a lot of questions on both teams on what their seasons could be like.
Two programs that have been great, legendary. They've been historic programs. Both fan bases would like to see them get back into the national championship discussion. Is LSU more built to get there faster than Florida State? Mike Norvell has a lot of answers with his football team this year. Lost some well-noted recruiting battles down the stretch, and there's a lot of question on, is he the guy to get it done in Tallahassee? This type of game goes a long way in determining whether or not that's the case. Brian Kelly with almost a completely new football team, several new faces starting. Blake mentioned Will Campbell, who appears to be a very special player with great NFL potential. The quarterback situation still unsettled. Jaden Daniels, it looks like may get the start, but that has not been confirmed by Coach Kelly yet. So I'm like you guys, I think we'll see both quarterbacks. I think LSU, though, overpowers them in the defensive front. I know that they're very excited about the defensive front down there. Matt House, the defensive coordinator, coming down from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's got a great defensive scheme in place. I think LSU wins this one 28-17.
You know, if this game was anywhere other than New Orleans, I might end up picking Florida State. In spite of, as you said, Florida State is going to have a load of trouble handling that LSU defensive line. LSU, however, this is incredible to me. They go into this game unranked in the preseason polls for the first time since 2000. It's been 22 years since we have not seen a number next to their name going into the season opener. But again, Florida State, they need Jordan Travis to take over the game at quarterback and get some things going in the run game for them. I think he only ran the ball maybe 3 or 4 times in their opener. They didn't really count on him to do a lot in that game. But with that LSU defensive line, if he gets on the run, he needs to get some positive yardage. keep that offense on the field, keep it moving. But it's in New Orleans. I've got LSU pulling this one out in a tight one, 21-17. Whoever makes the less mistakes, they'll end up winning this one. So, staying on Sunday, this is our final game we're going to be picking here. Jackson State and Florida A&M. Deion Sanders' group makes their season debut. Florida A&M, we got a sneak peek at in week 0. They went to North Carolina, fought valiantly. As you guys know, Florida A&M has been in the news for some compliance issues that have left players ineligible and unable to play. They had 26 players unable to play last week in that opener against North Carolina, and yet they still scored 20-plus points and kept it tight there in the first half. Very respectable. Florida A&M, though, still dealing with those compliance issues, and as of the recording of this, as we're talking live, looks like there's 17 players still who are ineligible for this game. And, oh, by the way, A&M down 2 offensive linemen due to injury from that North Carolina game. Man, very difficult, but are we in store for still a tight game? It was tight last year between these two squads. Carl, what do you think?
You know, the thing is with this game right here, was probably one of the most anticipated games on the HBCU slate all year. And then Florida A&M started having eligibility issues. It's still an anticipated game. The fan bases are still crazy about this. Florida A&M, though, 17 guys out. One of those guys is their best player, reigning FCS Defensive Player of the Year, Isaiah Land. And that makes a huge difference in a situation like this. Deion Sanders, a lot of star power. Travis Hunter, Kevin Coleman, 2 young top recruits to go along with his son, Shedeur Sanders, playing quarterback. They switched to an air raid offense, brought in an offensive coordinator off of Mike Leach's staff from Mississippi State. So you're going to see a lot of passing from them. Willie Simmons, head coach at Florida A&M, a former quarterback for the Clemson Tigers. So you're going to see a lot of passing tomorrow. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. But in the end, I think that the guys that Deion got in the transfer portal on the offense and defensive lines will make a difference down the stretch, and Jackson State wins a high-scoring game, 42-35.
Yeah, I think Deion Sanders in the transfer portal world is going to dominate. They're a much more talented team. I kind of give my kudos to Carl on giving me some tidbits on this, but I've got Jackson State as 36-7 winner in this game. Florida A&M's got too many guys out, too many injuries. Losing 2 more offensive linemen versus North Carolina last week is just tough, because think about it. They go down 1 more guy, they got to put either a D lineman or a tight end or somebody in there. So that's a very unfortunate situation for them, and it's a tough spot for them this week.
Florida A&M needs quarterback Jerry Musa to play as well as he did at North Carolina, if not better, to stay in this game. Like you guys said, the depth is just going to be an issue for Florida A&M with all these players out potentially, and look likely. So I got Florida A&M losing probably pretty big in this one against Jackson State, 31-17. I still think that Florida A&M is going to be able to score some points. I was impressed with the quarterback last week against UNC. I wanted to ask you guys real quick about these 2 coaches. Are they FBS head coaches here within the next 3 to 4 or 5 years?
I think they both definitely have their opportunities. A lot of it is going to depend on the commitments their schools make to making some of the changes that they're asking for. Deion Sanders obviously wants to coach at the FBCS level, but I think he really wants to do that with Jackson State. And so his hope is that Jackson State moves up to the FBS level. Willie Simmons has been a great young coach at Florida A&M. He's had a lot of success on the field, led them to the playoffs last year. So I think that it's like anything else. Your best FCS and group of 5 coaches that win consistently get those opportunities to move up. Deion is going to be on a lot of schools' wish lists. I think that Georgia Tech is probably going to be at the top of that list if they, in fact, decide to make a change, as well as Willie Simmons is going to be a very attractive pick for any Group of 5 school that's in the southeastern part of the country.
Yeah, I think Deion Sanders, without a doubt, is going to have a lot of opportunities to move up in the next couple of years. I think he likely had some opportunities this last offseason. I know he talked to a few schools. I think he'd be an excellent hire. He resonates decades, almost like Michael Jordan. Kids resonate with Deion Sanders. He's still a guy that people like and admire. He's a great football coach and person, and so he'll have his opportunity to do what he wants. Me personally, the money that he's got, I don't know why he'd want to deal with the headache that he would have to do to deal with that, but that's his decision to deal with. But he will have many opportunities. He's an excellent football coach, and I think whatever he wants to do is what he's going to do. And I think, like Carl said, if he can elevate Jackson State up a little bit, and he's been helping out the HBCUs as well, not just Jackson State, but being a figurehead for all of them. And I think he can do a lot more in that capacity than maybe he could at the next level. But I mean, he's got the pedigree to be a great coach at the next level as well.
That's the good thing. More HBCU games on national television, giving more of a spotlight to the coaches and the great players that we don't usually get to see, thanks to, in part, to Deion Sanders being at Jackson State. It's brought a lot more attention to that. So here we are. Week 1 is finally here. On paper, I think this is maybe the best Week 1 slate we've had in some time. I hope everybody enjoys it. 5 straight days of college football. Hey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel here at 24/7 Sports. Until next week, thanks, Carl. Thanks, Blake. This has been The Block.